What are you doing there? That's one of those shots. That was you were doing? You can speak freely here. Yeah, a couple more pictures of stuff. Pictures of basement. Pictures of stuff. Was that your basement or?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that might have been. Had it home.
I call to order the Waverly City Council for November 21st, 2016. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed by our city clerk, Carla Geyer?
So moved.
The motion, is there a second? Second. Motion and seconded. Discussion? All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no. This becomes our approved agenda. We welcome back our council guest for this whole month, Darren Gady. Darren, any words of reflection or wisdom?
No. For those in the audience here, I'm a 10-year resident of Waverly. I live in the southeast quadrant in Ward 1. Employee of John Deere.
Thank you for that reminder to everyone, especially our journalism students who are in the back and taking notes. You are welcome as well. This is the date, time, and place for a public hearing on the proposed annexation of 39 acres of land owned by Gene and Carol Anholt, Northwest Waverly. That's just north of Eisenach Village. City Clerk, do we have any written comments on this?
We do not, Your Honor.
Okay, then we'll move to oral comments. They are now welcome. Hearing none, I close the hearing. A formal motion would be in order.
I'll move acceptance of Resolution 1699, approving the voluntary annexation request for 39 acres in Northwest Waverly for the 2200 block on the east side of 20th Street Northwest.
Second, please.
Second.
Motion seconded. Council discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Kangas.
Yes.
Scher.
Yes.
Gade.
No.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Resnicek.
Yes.
This passes 6-1. At this time, I would entertain any public comments on any items not on tonight's agenda. Any comments by the public? Any items not on tonight's agenda? Thank you, and a reminder to the public watching that this is an important part of who we are, and if you ever have stuff to bring to us, this would be the time. We have 2 items on tonight's consent calendar. They are a pay request from VJ Engineering for the Cedar Lane reconstruction, 2017. We have the Klusner construction work on asphalt patching for this 2016 year. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Second?
Motion and seconded. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no. Approved. Regular business item number 1 is to set a public hearing to consider hosting the 2018 Iowa Firefighters Convention. Let's go directly to a motion.
I'll move setting December 5th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of City Hall as a date, time, and place for the public hearing for a special permit request for a temporary campground for the State of Iowa Firefighters Convention scheduled for September 2018 is being sought by BNKD, Inc.
Second, please.
Second.
Motion seconded. Council discussion. First, this is just to set the public hearing, so. Public input on this one?
I guess
All in
I
f-
have,
Yeah.
I
go
have
ahead,
some
Eve.
questions I just wanted to make. I was wondering if somebody could give us, maybe Tab, whoever's most appropriate, give us a summary of what occurred in terms of where are there discrepancies, if any, between what we approved for the last one and what was supposed to be done and how it ended up? I mean, are there Was the agreement followed?
I'd sure be more comfortable looking at the original agreement before I answered that. I mean, they came, they had their party, and they left.
Are there things still up there from the event?
Apparently, it's been seeded, and I've seen the grass starting to come in. There's still ag lime on the park. I don't know what the plans are for that. Otherwise, I walk through there every so often because I live up there, and it looks like it's the majority of the area is recovering.
And there isn't any structure or hardware still there that hasn't been removed, that was supposed to be removed?
Well, the utility poles and the power things are still there. There's a couple semi-trailers there. I didn't know if they were supposed to be removed or not. Again, I'd like to look at the agreement.
Well, I'm supportive of going through the readings process, but I think we should look at that. I mean, I've heard from citizens who are concerned about what was and wasn't done. So, just as part of the conversational process as we get to a decision, if you could look at that or send me what there is to look at.
Sure.
Who owns this property?
B&KD or Dennis Happel does, except for the area of the park.
Thank you.
But this request is for the park area as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there'll be a number of issues as we move forward on this. Thank you, Councilperson, and thank you.
The power poles are on the BNKD property, correct? They're not on the park.
Correct.
And that's fine. I understand the rights of personal property, but I do think there were also some promises made about removing them that haven't happened.
From property they own?
Excuse me?
From property that they own?
Yes, I thought so. That's why we just need to clarify what exactly was in the agreement. I thought it was for all of the space, not just for the parkland. I thought there was agreements about the entire area.
Development agreements are important. I agree.
Yeah, and we do want to be thorough on this one. Thank you. All in favor signify with yes.
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 Opposed with no, unanimously approved. Regular business item number 2 is a review and discussion of the progress and schedule of our Green Bridge project. Casey Faber is here, and Faud Daoud, and I think Casey is making the presentation.
You bet.
And in case you've missed this, Casey is increasingly a household name in Waverly as he reports regularly on this Green Bridge effort. So, Casey.
It has been a while. It is a comfortable place. My sister lives about halfway, so I could have chili with my nieces tonight, so I appreciate that too. But we turned check plans. This is the normal process that we follow with all DOT projects. Check plans go to the owner, that's you guys, Mike's office, to take a look at them. We call them 100% unapproved. So it's basically where we are to a place where we feel really good about these, and we would sign them if there weren't comments coming from you. So there's been the last few weeks since the end of October that Mike's had these. We've had a couple of back and forths about some items. And at the same time, because of the complexity of this project, we've been upfront with you. This is not a normal repair. We've been going through some additional quality control, quality assurance checks of our own in-house. And so that's all but complete as far as incorporating those comments and changes. And so if there's any questions, I can definitely answer them. And as we receive any additional comments and continue to communicate with Mike and his staff, we'll incorporate all of those changes, and we'll have signed final plans next week. The one outstanding item that I'll just bring to your attention so you're aware of it is the Iowa DNR floodplains permit. Their consideration of this as a substantial project versus a repair was a little bit of a complexity that we did not foresee coming. They had wanted to do full hydraulic permitting, and when we sat down and we talked about what we were actually doing, that while yes, the bridges are being moved, the piers are being reconstructed, everything is remaining geometrically the same, and so there aren't actually any hydraulic changes. And once they understood that, they decided to proceed as we had anticipated. However, that was a little bit backed up. The email that I got this morning from the engineer at the DNR said that we'd have it by the end of the month, so we should still be on schedule with no issues there that we anticipate anyway. And so we'll have signed final plans, like I said, next week. I think Mike had wanted me to kind of talk through a little bit. See if I do this right. That's on.
Should be ready except for the lens cap.
All right. Success. The estimate that we submitted with this. And so as you can see, or can't. There it is. This item list right here is the bid items that are included in the plans. We've got this split into 2 pages. We split our bridge items up and our roadway items. I'll talk through a little bit of this first. We'll start with this route. Just so that you have the costs in front of you, I'll explain what these numbers are. When we initially started this process about a year ago, right now, we had come up with some estimates, updated estimates for you that we presented at the beginning of this year. And our total after coming to the conclusion through the testing that Braun did that the piers needed to be replaced came out to be about $2.9 million was our estimate at that point. You may remember that at that point we had about a 20% contingency, as was the normal for the DOT process at that point, because there's a lot of unknowns. As you can see here now, and you can see in the plans, things are known. We have quantities that are relatively final, unless there's any, like I said, any last-minute changes between Mike's staff and us. But these are final quantities, and we can assign values to them for cost. And so the way that we get those costs is the DOT tracks all of their bid information month to month at every letting. And so we have access to see what those average prices were. We see the high, we see the low. But additionally, because of the work that we at WHKS do with the DOT, specifically on repair projects, we have access through that contract to bid prices specifically for repairs. So we can even get a little bit better information than just that general that's out there for the public. So we've gone through, and based on our best information, as you know, we talked with a contractor at one point about what it might cost to lift and move those bridge spans off. And so this is on our best information, what's present as of last month's letting in October. These are the prices. And so the way that we've split this up, you see the letter A there, that base price of right around $2.4 million, is all of the bridge items. What that doesn't include is what we're calling alternates for the sidewalk and for the fence. As you guys directed, the historical nature of this bridge is really the reason it's here. It's not because it's the most functional bridge that could be there, but it's because this is important to the community. And so one of the things that Mike's office directed us to do early on was to look into the feasibility of keeping an original sidewalk and reusing that lattice-style fence that was out there. That wasn't what was in our initial estimate, but you can see the items B, C, D, and E down below. And so the combinations that you see, those 3 subtotals, are a combination of that $2.4 million, which is all of the other bridge items, with different sidewalk and different fence options. I'll flip the plans open in just a second and show you what those configurations are. But the basic idea is that we could go, that first line right there is to replicate as original as we possibly can. The lattice fence, the sidewalk that actually is poured and formed around the trusses. So the reason that costs more is the fabrication of that lattice fence is expensive. Even reusing some of the sections that are at the water treatment plant, that cost is included there. And then forming, all the additional forming that it will take to do the extra rebar bending and cutting, forming the concrete sidewalk around the truss verticals and diagonals. That's all included in that as well. So the cost is going to go up because of the complexity of the field labor that takes. The second line there is using the original sidewalk and using a chain link fence on the outside instead of the lattice fence, okay? And then the last item is using a straight 5-foot wide sidewalk and chain link fences on both sides, and that's basically what's out there right now. So that's the three differences. I'll pop the plans open here so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about instead of in numbers and pictures. Should have marked my pages. That would be replicating the original sidewalk. You can see this location here. The sidewalk extends past this truss vertical and to the edge of the deck. And then this fence right here is a replica and reuse of the existing lattice fence, the original lattice fence that's there. Down lower here, we show the alternate sidewalk that's 5 feet wide. It's straight. It terminates ahead of the vertical, so there's no need to form around. It's just a straight shot. There's not a lot of extra rebar cutting or anything like that. A much simpler field construction. And then shown in both of these are the chain link fence on the west and east side of that sidewalk. And so the reason that there's three options is because you have this option that's shown with chain link on both sides, or an option that includes the original sidewalk with either lattice fence or chain link fence on that west edge. If we use the original sidewalk, there's no need for an interior fence because of the speed of the roadway and there not being a gap between the sidewalk and the roadway. There's no safety concern. There's nothing that we need to worry about as far as a fence on the east side using the original sidewalk. So if there's any questions on that. As you can see, these would be our bridge subtotals. So we go from 2.53 to 2.62 million. In the bridge side, we add to that the roadway items, which are not as substantial in the scheme of things. And again, broken out in that cost, the roadway items around $64,000. And you see the range there from around 2.6 to around 2.69. As Mike and I discussed this, we're a little bit ahead of, the initial estimate that we gave you. So when you add in engineering, because that initial estimate of $2.9 million included the engineering costs, with our fee and the subconsultant fee for Braun to do the testing included, and then the field observation that we anticipate being necessary during construction, we're probably closer to $3 million versus 2.9. And as we explained back, in February, those were early numbers. We know more things about the plans now. There's some increased quantities as we got out there and really dug into what needed to be replaced. At a lot of the corners, the gusset plates that were there that we were planning to replace had been strengthened through welding gusset plates on top of them. That welding requires us to replace some pieces of the bottom cord, as well as that first diagonal that goes up from there. And so there's a little bit more steel that needs to be replaced and fabricated in the field, but for the scope of the project, we really feel pretty good about this number and where we're at. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the plans or about any of the numbers. The numbers that I have right here are updated as of our QA/QC check, and so they are a little bit different than the ones that you see in front of you. Should have mentioned that maybe right away at the beginning, but.
So when you say it's closer to 3 million rather than 2.9, that's with the 2.9 was the adjusted, was not the original estimate. The original estimate was like 2.4.
Yep, correct.
And then we had a $500,000.
Correct, for the
increase,
replacement of the
right.
piers, yes.
And now it's another 100,000, although in our materials, it says there's an $800,000 difference, which would be more like 3.2 million.
I'm not sure. Mike, do you have the?
Yeah.
We've got the original engineering agreement just under 200,000. The additional pure design geotech work for 40, and then construction observation. It's kind of a plug number of 200,000, and so with the construction pre-bid estimate around 2.7 million, and then that takes us up to about 3.16, and that is approximately $800,000 over the original
Yep.
2.4 million.
You're not using the total he just gave. His total was 2.5 to 2.6 million, or not 2.7. What's the difference there?
He has, Casey's number is, actually, where are you at here?
No, you're on the right one.
But this is the right one.
I see it.
2.685, so about 2.7.
Or 2.6. Depends on
Eight.
what we choose, right?
Well, 2.685 is awfully close to 2.7.
Right, but if you go with the,
2.5,
if you
200.
if you
Oh,
strip
I
it
see.
down and
So you
go
could
less
bring it down
historic,
100,000, basically.
if you want to go
Yep.
less historic.
So it'd be 3.2 or 3.1.
Yep.
Roughly.
And so, yeah, that's where, for me to compare to what we gave you, I'm saying 3.1 because that's
Yeah.
what we were estimating at the beginning. The way that we structured the plans is that we're requiring bidders to bid on all 4 items and then giving the city the opportunity to, based on budget at that time or with the way that bids come in, to select 2 of those options and choose which route you're going to go from there. The plans are put together so that no matter your choice, they're ready to go ahead with whatever option.
Early on in the project, you had indicated that you had like a 20,000 or 20% contingency.
Mm-hmm.
Do these numbers contain any contingency amounts, or are they what we'd expect for bid numbers?
This is what we expect for bid numbers, and you know, I have to qualify that with we aren't contractors. We do this based on projects we've seen, the numbers that we have available from the DOT, and so I don't know exactly what it will take, but these are based on our best estimates. The only way that we really build contingency in is that these aren't the averages that you'd find online. For things that we know are more complex, we inflate those costs somewhat based on that range and a feel that we have from other projects. For items that are a very low quantity, we know that bid price is then going to go up from the average because with larger quantities, your price comes down. But no contingency directly built into this number at all.
I guess I'm asking that as intimate as you've been with the bridge. The question that I've gotten from a lot of folks is, okay, just like an old house, once you tear into it, you're going to find some things that you didn't see from the outside or when you were digging around in it. What is our concern level there that we're going to see change orders that'll...
We really feel we're stripping this down to the bones. Not to say that that's not impossible. You know, that's why we did the concrete testing. That's why I've crawled on my hands and knees over the entire square footage of this deck. And so, you know, we've put this with our best available information together. And so, you know, the hope is that that's not an issue now. You know, that's why we did the testing in those 2 phases and unfortunately came back and had to change the scope a little bit. But that's why we did it then, so that we wouldn't experience it later.
Did the 2.4 include a contingency?
Yes. Yep.
So
And
really,
that update as well.
right. So really then, the difference is even greater than $800,000. Because the contingency was built into the
Well, the contingency is somewhat built because you don't know all the quantities,
Right.
and you know that there's items that you can't quantify at an early stage,
Okay.
but that will be a part of it. And so it's not just we don't know the price or we don't know the cost. The contingency is built in because we know there are unanticipated costs at approximately this level based on history, and so that's why the 20% level was selected.
So the timeline going forward is in your agenda memo here. Flip to the back page. So we're at November 21st, and as we proceed forward, getting past Thanksgiving, going into December, Casey would finalize the plans. We'd be looking at getting the DNR permit, and we'd begin the marketing process. As we previously reviewed with the council, there are dozens of contractors on the qualified bidders list for the DOT. They're pre-qualified, and that would be the basis of our marketing effort to reach out to them, make them aware of the project, and get them interested. And then we would begin the public hearing process in January, and the bid letting is February 7th, and we'd be looking at reporting back to the council on February 20th. I would like to point out that in their cost estimate, they do use some very big round numbers, and this kind of accounts for that unknown quantity. What's the bid environment? How hungry are the contractors out there? So you'll see mobilization, $200,000. Lifting and moving the bridge spans, $250,000. These are big numbers, and this is where contractors tend to get very competitive. And contractors that are resourceful and clever and able to figure out a way, this lifting and moving the bridge spans may come in at $100,000. But that's what makes this project very unique compared to your traditional bridge project. And so at this point, yes, there still are a lot of unknowns out there, and it's really coming down to the bid environment. And we're going to do our best to garner as much interest and attention on this project as we can over the next 2 months.
Can you maybe describe, I appreciate that explanation, because I was looking through here and there's a lot of round numbers and estimates. How do you go about actually marketing? How do you sell a project to get the best bid possible? How do we, I guess, how can I feel comfortable that we're going to get the best bid possible and the lowest bid possible?
Like Mike said, it definitely starts with making sure that the bidder is capable. We don't want somebody bidding this and awarding low bid to somebody that's not really qualified to do the work. A local handyman shouldn't be out, bidding this. And so that's where the DOT's pre-qualified list is the best place for us to start. Mike talked, I think, previously about developing some materials with photographs so that they know exactly what they're getting into, and good description of the project, of the community, that sort of thing, as kind of a pamphlet or brochure, and sending it to those, letting them know that there will be this bid happening for this project, and so that it piques their interest. He's also planning, you saw the February 7 date, so that's splitting the difference between two Iowa DOT bids. When contractors are bidding a lot of projects all at once, it's a lot of work to put these kind of numbers together in a really specific way that's competitive. And so by doing it on an off week where they don't have 5 or 6 other projects that they might be going after, they can focus and hone in on giving us a really great number here. And that's kind of part of that hope as well. So moving forward, once final plans are to Mike, we have as part of our contract to continue to assemble construction documents and that bid package with his staff.
I'd like to mention the Charles City pedestrian bridge that was put up. It's a cable stay ped bridge, very unique, very, I want to say, not many of them being built.
It's a landmark structure.
Yeah, and that came in $1 million under estimate. 20%. Yeah, and they if I recall correctly, they ended up with a contractor that, again, had thought through how to build it, and I think came up with some very clever ideas that kept their cost very low, which made them very competitive.
Another quick question. Just with the schedule, there's public hearings before the bidding. I guess I kind of thought it might be the other way around. That we would have, I think we were on a journey to get concrete numbers and then do a public hearing, or maybe just describe, maybe I'm catching this wrong.
Well, there is some history to that. That was 19 years ago when I started. That's the way we did it. We held the public hearing after we took the bids.
Okay.
And that way you're holding the public hearing on the actual bid price with any addendums that may have come out. But Mayor Ike Ackerman changed that. And so we've been doing it this way since probably 1998, 1999. There is no state requirement that you hold it before, just that you hold one before you award it.
Yeah. I guess I'd like to, I mean, lost my train of thought. Personally, I guess we'd want to have concrete numbers, and then have the public weigh in if that's what we're going to do. That's just me, I guess. That's why I was asking. I mean, I guess I'd want to avoid a lot of energy on public hearing, a lot of discussion if we don't have concrete numbers yet. But that's just me.
That would be a change in council policy that I guess you have to decide whether you want to do it one time or you want to do it across the board for all projects.
I guess I didn't realize that was is that an ordinance or no?
I think it's an actual ordinance because it's not necessarily required by the state. I think it's just something that's been past precedent, kind of a policy of the council that have done it this way. So
Yeah.
it can be changed. It's just as that's the wishes of council.
I would have to research to see if it had been done by a resolution previously.
Yeah.
I think everything you said tonight with how, I mean, you're pretty confident that you're going to get competitive bids, and you gave an example where one came in 20% under. That's good news.
Well, I'm saying we're going to make
I
a
know.
good faith effort
Yep.
to solicit competitive bids.
Exactly. And so he's giving numbers that he said, we're updated as of last month with the DOT bidding. You guys have all that good. So we have really good information here with really solid numbers. And you both seem pretty positive about getting good bids that probably might be lower. So I think that's good. So
I appreciate your work.
You bet. Anything else?
I just still have concerns about the overall cost, as you know. I mean, we're $800,000 over the estimate to repair. We're $1 million over a new bridge that would last much longer. So I still have those concerns, and I'm still hearing them from citizens as well.
I hear every
That's
week
where the
from
bid-
someone, when is the bridge going to be open? And I still have to tell them, well, we haven't even assigned anyone to build it yet, to refix it. So they are just can't wait for it to be open.
Yeah, I received a phone call at the office from someone from the community about it, actually, and I said, we weren't hired to fix the bridge. We're working on getting plans so somebody can. So the misconception, I
asking
think,
why
in
it
the,
takes so long.
the design and construction world sometimes as to what everybody's doing, but you're
And
exactly
I've
right.
explained why
That's-
we're waiting until February, because it's the best time that we've been told to get the best bids, and so that's harder for the public to understand too, like why we're waiting so long to even get bids. But hopefully this, we're using your guys' expertise to get the best possible numbers we can. So
Bet.
people are anxious.
Casey, we thank you.
Bet, thank you.
Fuad, we thank you.
My last couple of thoughts. I guess I kind of agree with Dave. I would, at least for this project, I'd like to have bids than the public hearing. I think it'll be better for the process. I think we'll all be looking at the same numbers and not what somebody thinks it'll come in at, and the public can certainly weigh in then on solid numbers versus what they're hoping the next today's numbers will be, that type of thing, so. Not suggesting that we do it as a wholesale change, but at least for this project, I think it would suit it well.
I would agree with that. If they're going to be coming in with all four options to be able to pick, kind of piece together which one we prefer, that might not be a bad idea to have public input on that as well, to hear what they're thinking, if they think something is worth it versus not worth it.
Okay, we'll research that, and if it needs to be a motion by council to make the change, we'll do that. Otherwise, if it doesn't, we'll try and proceed with rearranging that hearing to go in accordance with the bids that come in. So we'll make that happen.
Sounds a bit deja vu, but. What?
Unfortunately,
Yes. Regular business item number 3 is to pay for our summer sidewalk repairs that took place in District 6, which is largely southeast, at least up to the river, and some northeast. Let's go directly to a motion.
Move resolution 16-100 approving change order number 1 with a net increase of $2,966.05 and accepting the city-wide sidewalk repair 2016 project as complete with the final pay request of $4,844.01 to Feldman Concrete of Dyersville, Iowa.
Second.
Second.
Motion second. Council discussion. Public input. Means a happy populace.
Are we worried this came in over budget, or
Say it again.
are we okay with this coming in over budget? About 100% increase, but that's okay.
100% increase. I guess I see that the original estimate was about 92,000.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just read.
Yeah.
Some of it is from
I'm
quantity
sorry, I
issues.
read
And, oh, it's all right.
$2,000 increase.
Okay.
Okay.
Roll call vote, please.
Scherer.
Yes.
Gade.
Yep.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Resnichek. Kangas.
Yes.
Resolution 16-100 is unanimously approved. Regular business item number 4 is to approve the assessment amounts for the private property sidewalk repairs for this past summer and fall. This is also District 6. A formal motion, please.
I'll move acceptance of Resolution 16-101, approving the final assessment schedule for the 2016 sidewalk maintenance and inspection program.
Second, please.
Second.
Motion seconded. Council discussion.
Where does it say how many people are?
I was kind of looking for that too. I don't think it says, but you can try to count them, which I started to
Just
do
wondering
and
how
then
many
stopped.
residents decided to use this option, but I know it's a few every year that decide to do that. So sounds good. Yeah, seems to be okay.
So you're asking for what number? Not those that are affected. You're asking for some exception?
They're taking advantage of the special assessment.
Yes, I'm just asking how many are choosing to have the process done this way instead of
Okay.
themselves.
Okay. I just couldn't hear you acoustically. Nor Carla, sorry.
And the answer is yeah, that's a good question. The answer is
Some.
some.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I know every year we have obviously some homeowners that do
Just
it
do it
themselves,
themselves.
and some that
Don't go with the asset.
go
Yeah.
through the city, and I'm just curious what that number is. But
There's 58 assessments.
okay, thank you.
Public input on this item? Roll call vote, please.
Gade.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Resnichek.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Scherer.
Yes.
What did you say, Mike? It's 6-0. No, I'm sorry. Resolution 16-101 is unanimously approved. Regular business item number 5 is to approve the leases of 3 small parcels in the airport safety zone to Lowe, Jansen, and Burkle Properties. City Administrator, there's a reduction here in the amounts that we're going to be asking for. Any comments on that?
We tried to establish rent, based on fair land prices, and when you see commodities drop as they have from the last time this was set, we thought that was a fair compromise for the properties available. So land prices have dropped substantially since a year or so ago, and then commodities as well, so the reduction of $75 an acre seemed appropriate when the negotiation was done.
So we ended up about 225, was it something?
Yes, it's at 225, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Motion, please.
I'll move Resolution 16102, approving lease agreements between the City of Waverly and William Lowe, James, and Sandra Jansen and KW Farms, Inc., for the safety zone acquisition parcels of land that are adjacent to their properties for the amount of $225 per acre.
Second. Council discussion. Public input. Roll call vote.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Resnichek.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Scherer.
Yes.
Cade.
Resolution 16-102, unanimously approved. Regular business item number 6 is to approve an engineering agreement for Phase 3 services to complete the airport land acquisition. City Administrator, any comments? Fairly simple here.
This is just continuation of services McClure has done over the years as we go forward with trying to finish the airport project. They'll look at like tree obstruction, kind of height limits, that kind of thing as they move forward, and that's what the agreement is outlining.
Thank you. Motion, please.
I'll move Resolution 16103, approving the engineering service agreement with McClure Engineering Company of Clive, Iowa, for the Waverly Municipal Airport land acquisition, Phase 3 services for a not-to-exceed amount of $30,000.
Second.
Second.
Motion seconded. Council discussion.
I guess I've got some questions on some of the items. The tree obstruction survey on a couple different properties, I guess I would have thought that would have already been done as we're trying to get easements on those. Then the others, assisting the city attorney in making offers, assisting the city attorney with negotiating purchase agreements, coordinating closings. That probably just I didn't understand, but that doesn't sound like an engineering firm thing to do. It sounds like something we would already be doing. Maybe just some explanation.
I think basically it's just assisting in whatever we need. If we don't need anything, then they won't bill us for any services related to that. So it's generally the engineer does have a lot of involvement if a city does not have a city engineer or city attorney. And so that would be something they would take a more active role in doing. But they will still be involved in assisting our negotiations from our office. And Andy's here.
Is this something unique with the FAA because we're working with that?
Generally, it is because their specialty is your specialty is the aviation situation. So.
Yeah, my name is Andy Mason with McClure Engineering Company. So yeah, we'll have a lot of coordination with the FAA on funding type conference calls, that type of stuff, revising survey plats as needed, coordinating with the appraisers. There's just a lot of stuff over the past 3 to 4 years that we've been working on these 10 to 15 parcels that we've been acquiring. So.
Maybe, I guess I'm just kind of struggling with maybe some examples or.
Sure.
Because it looks like number 2, number 3, number 4, we wouldn't need the tree obstruction survey. I would assume that's already would have had to been done because we're negotiating with that already, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, so I believe originally we just planned on, just
doing an acquisition of the parcel. Going back, there was talk about converting that to just a navigation easement for airspace. So at that time, the appraiser asked, well, how many trees exactly do we need to, either trim or remove? So then at that point, we had to go back to the FAA and do a case study to really figure out at this point, well, how many trees and how is that going to affect the value of their property. So originally up front, we were just, planning on just the complete take of it, and then through the negotiation process, Bill, you can help me out here, but we've tried to meet them, and negotiate just the easements on just an navigation easement or an airspace easement on some of those parcels.
In order to facilitate acquisition of what we needed to complete the safety zone, they inquired as to whether we could do an easement on property instead of on some of the property instead of acquisition of all of it. So we've taken these efforts basically at the request of the people that own the properties to see whether that would be something they would be acceptable to them. We usually do an easement based on whether they are in agreement with doing it and it's a voluntary. If they don't choose to do a voluntary easement, then we do an acquisition of the minimum amount of land that we have to take for that safety zone.
So I understand that, but I'm not understanding why there'd be engineered design in something like this or that type of work.
Well, for example, I could give you an example. For example, on the Clam property on the west side of the airport, originally the take line was established, and through the negotiation process, we developed a preliminary plat, if you will, of the acquisition. And go through the negotiation process over the years, we've revised those take lines. We've gone through and resurveyed, and we've done the engineering land surveying on those finalizing those plats and going back with the appraisal process. So that'd be one example of how we've coordinated with the attorney on that, and so forth.
And I believe that these are generalized areas that they may provide assistance. A lot of these, I've done all the work on the offers and negotiating the purchase agreements and coordinating closings so far. That's something they normally do, though, with others in other communities, and so there may be some help that they will give us in that regard.
Mm-hmm. I'd say a lot of it's just beyond engineering, just coordinating with the FAA on just the technical items of aviation type related stuff. And the engineering is pretty limited to just a height of survey at this point, and doing land surveying adjustments to plats over the past few years. That helps make sense.
But this isn't over the past few years. This is kind of going forward, though, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that's a good point. So our last agreement was signed on November the 5th, 2012, which was the phase, which we termed the Phase 2 services. So that was just getting us to the basically the coordinating the appraisals with the appraiser. We were hoping to. We didn't think this was going to take 4 years, so we were hoping to absorb some of those costs moving forward. We just, with the duration extending 4 years and us continuing involvement, we've expended a lot of resources and effort on that over the past, 3 years, and so that's.
Yeah. So the $30,000 would go back or cover things that were done in the past?
Some of it, yes. Yeah, we've incurred $15,000 roughly over those Phase 2 services. So the not to exceed of $30,000 hope is,
You wouldn't have billed that though?
No, we didn't have an agreement open with you guys at that point. So yeah, we just, like I said, we were hoping to absorb some of those costs and not have it to go to a Phase 3. But there's just been a lot of coordination since then that's been required.
Would you normally do work and not bill it?
No. Well, we're just trying to, we thought it would just be a small amount over the years, and it just continued to escalate, and we're hoping to put, come to a close on these agreements. So, yeah.
So you've submitted a bill then, for an itemized bill for?
No, we have not yet, no.
But they do quote an estimate in there of past expenses. It's
Correct.
$15,000 and something.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
That's for Phase 1, right?
No.
No, for phase
It's actually for beyond the scope of phase 2.
Sure.
They've estimated, I think, almost $16,000.
Any additional questions? Yeah, thank you.
Seems like most of the work for phase 3 is done.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it's, depending on how long these remaining 2 parcels take, yes. Mm-hmm.
So there probably wouldn't be any more, there wouldn't be an expense then? I guess I'm still not understanding. I'm
sure.
You're still getting
Yeah,
$30,000.
we're just, like I said in the letter, we've incurred
You still got a
approximately.
$30,000 not to exceed on there. That's what.
I think they're trying to avoid perhaps what's already happened so far.
Correct.
Going over budget?
Well, it going on for so long that they had expenses that they weren't able to absorb and are going back and accounting for those now and saying there might be some more in the future. This is how I understand it.
Yeah, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Going over budget planned, yeah.
But yeah, there was never a set budget. Like I said, we've never been under agreement for these services, so we weren't trying to come back and ask for more, but we've absorbed this over the years, and just we want to give a ceiling moving forward if we need to get involved in the future. We just have that.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm assuming our city had a budget that we planned out for this, but
Yeah, Mike, I don't know.
get into all that, so that's fine.
No. More council discussion. We thank you for your input.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Is there any public input on this item? Roll call vote, please.
Lampy,
Yes.
Waldstein,
Yes.
Resnicek,
No.
Kangas,
Yes.
Chair,
Yes.
Gade,
No.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Resolution 16-103 passes, what was it, 5 to 2. Thank you. Regular business item number 7 is to approve an easement on city-owned land for the water line, Central Iowa Water Association. Directly to a motion.
Move resolution 16-104, approving a water line easement for Central Iowa Water Association across the Rolling Prairie Trail near the right-of-way of Hilton Avenue.
A second, please.
Second.
Motion seconded. Council discussion.
We're not charging for this?
This is just a water line that's going, it would be in the road right away if it was wide enough, but this goes under the trail. And so generally, when we have another entity, we don't necessarily try to charge for this kind of an easement. Our trail goes under their road, or under the county's road, and it's kind of all together in that space.
So it's different than when we as a city have easements on every residential property from the sidewalk to the street. I mean, we force the landowners to pay for their sidewalks and do all that. Or if we take an easement to build the dry run, for example, we pay people to use that easement, but we're letting them use this for free.
Well, none of those probably correlate with this situation because this is a water line that we're allowing Central Iowa Water to run to different areas that we aren't serving. I understood that it was something that's commonly done, that this isn't something we usually charge for in this kind of situation out in the country. It's not often that we own land in the county where this would be a relevant situation. Because of the trail being owned by the city, the actual trail, then it's something that generally they would, I don't know. This is what it was presented to me.
Just seems like whenever we take an easement from a citizen, we pay them for that, which we just talked about actually. But so someone's going to ask for an easement from us, and we just give it to them. So that's why I wondered what the difference was. Maybe it's normal. Well,
There are utility easements across the trail in a couple different places, and they have to maintain their utilities. So we don't charge them for going on our property to maintain it either. For instance, there's a main power line that they come through and they clear cut basically a 50-foot swath, including the trail, going north and south. They do that every 6 or 7 years or something like that. They don't pay anything for them to come onto that.
But if that part of the trail needed to be repaired, who would pay for it?
Yeah,
Yes.
if they,
Yeah.
yeah.
We would.
No,
It's
if
our
they,
trail.
If they damaged it.
Well, but we make citizens pay to repair their sidewalk that may have inched up an inch over 100 years, even though they didn't damage it. That's why I'm just asking what the difference is, I guess.
it's a local policy decision.
So it's our decision. is what you're saying.
Correct.
Other council discussion?
I think it's weird, but go ahead.
But I just want to make sure I'm understanding. I think if there were damage by the utilities or the water company to the trail, we would expect them to pay for repair of that. Is that correct?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I thought that's what you were asking.
No,
Okay.
that would happen in your yard too. I'm just saying, if your sidewalk was found to be heaved
Right.
an inch above where it is, because you built your house 100 years ago, you would have to pay for that, even though it's on a city easement. The city wouldn't come. So we're giving them an easement. We're giving them land of ours for free to use. But when it comes to actually repair that land, we will pay for it, even though it's technically theirs. Just like you can't put signs between the sidewalk and the street because it's owned by the city, technically.
Question whether, whether,
Franchise fees, because that's what pays for the easement. And so
question whether that's
now we're
really
reversing it.
apples to apples.
Somebody for it.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to weigh in on
Yeah,
that?
the more you talk, I guess I get your point, that they're asking for an easement, and not paying for it, I guess, right? That's basically your.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying.
But to your point, we've made a decision not to do that with the cable utilities, so why are we now asking the water utility to pay it if we're not going to have the cable utility pay?
We make the citizens pay to do their sidewalks, right?
I don't think this is a citizen, it's a business similar to the cable company, so I would assume we would treat two businesses the same.
Is a farming a business?
So are there businesses that we get easements from that we don't pay for?
I mean, if we
Honestly, I have no idea. This is kind of a routine thing you see everywhere without a lot of discussion. I'm kind of not sure why we're going this far down. If we want to research this and pull it off,
I
we
just
sure
thought
can.
it was
But
awkward, that's all I'm saying.
and I understand
Because
that,
we,
but
we collect an
we're
easement
talking in
from a-
circles, and we're taking how much time on this very simple process. We want to research it deeper
Well, we
and
talked
look
for
into
45
should
minutes
we.
on the Green Bridge, which was simple too. So
I don't know that a $3 million bridge is that simple a project compared to a simple boring of a water line.
I was just getting numbers, but
If I could
already voted
finish.
on twice.
If you want us to research this out, we sure will, and we can identify all the things we do and don't get easements for. Otherwise, I'm not sure where we're going with it. I think the point's been made. You think they should pay for it, and we're trying to identify if we should or shouldn't.
Ask the question why they don't, and no one could give me an answer. So
And that's what I said, is we will research it if you'd like us to, and you can certainly hold this off, and we can vote on it at different
Just
times
say
as a
it's
council.
fine. We're good.
Okay. Anyway, we're going to take a roll call vote, but first I need public input on this, if they'd like to weigh in. Then we'll do roll call vote, resolution 16 on 104.
Waldstein,
Yes.
Resnick,
Yes?
Kangas,
Yes.
Scherer,
Yes.
Gade,
Yep.
McKenzie,
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Resolution 16-104 is unanimously approved. Regular business item number 8 is to create a minor subdivision plat for a lot creation located on the east side of the 1000 block of Bremer Road. City Administrator, maybe a quick summary for the public.
I'll have Bill Werger go ahead and explain this through the zoning process. I think it's a very simple procedure.
This is a subdivision that has 3 lots, and 2 of the lot owners are, one of them is acquiring part of the other one's lot to make them different sizes. And they've decided that they would like to have a different sized yard so that there's still going to be 3 lots, and there's not going to be an additional house or anything of that nature. It's just 3 different lots, sizes.
So one neighbor is taking a little bit more of the others.
Right. Right.
Got it. Formal motion, please.
I will move Resolution 16105, approving the minor subdivision plat for the creation of parcel N for property on the east side and in the 1,000 block of Bremer Road, northeast Waverly, for residential lot creation for applicant David and Audrey Clamforth.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. And council discussion. Public input. Roll call vote.
Resnick.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Scher.
Yes.
Gade.
Yep.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Resolution 16-105 is unanimously approved. Regular business item number 9 is a proposed ordinance to govern the use of city streets and public property for special events. Little history on this one. Obviously, we have some increased activity around town and hosting a lot. City Administrator, the purpose behind this is coordination?
Well, as you mentioned, Mayor, in the recent months, we've had a much larger presence of concerts and events that are far beyond a simple block in a neighborhood being blocked off a block party permit. And that is really the only document we've had to go forward with and try to amend and adjust accordingly. So in talking with staff, we determined that the best method would be to establish an actual special permit policy or a policy that could be utilized going forward for these type of larger events. And those are our first draft to trying to get something on the books to do that, to kind of outline what is expected, what would be necessary, whether it be multiple street closures, multiple blocks, road barriers, as you go through and kind of see, trash removal, et cetera. So we're trying to encompass this into a more clear-cut version of what the city does and doesn't allow for these much larger than a simple block party items that have been coming up more and more frequently, and we expect them to continue going forward, whether it be concerts or events, and it's hard to say how many more will occur. And so instead of trying to, as I say, reconfigure a simple permit, we wanted something a little more extensive to try to establish kind of a cleaner version of what we would want done and how. So that's kind of what we've presented before you.
So this would enable us to expedite things a little more quickly and not necessarily have to clear the elementary stuff through city council and stuff like that? Or
More protection, I guess.
It's a little bit of everything, and you're right, Wes. It's kind of a list of what we would want done versus having a very simple statement that's a little too wide open, and then we have to add a bunch of things to it. This tries to truly encompass, signage and beverage containers. You can see fire code requirements. We try to hit everything we possibly could, whether it's city property and parking and street closures and barricades, and all the things that we go through whenever we have these events is really in a verbal statement and written down and trying to negotiate out. We wanted something more up front, so when an event comes in and would like to do something such as the Revive concert, or when you look at even Heritage Days or places they want to expand and utilize more property or the fire association permits, this will allow them to understand exactly what we would expect, and it's just a much cleaner, broader version, so they can see coming in ahead of time what is going to be anticipated. Because I know a couple times, even with Rebuy, we sat down and once we went through the whole list of what was needed, it was a little overwhelming when you hadn't seen anything prior. So this is to give them kind of a heads up so that they can know what we expect, what the cost may be associated with it, and have a better understanding before they bring it to council or bring it to staff to be looked at and reviewed.
I think it's a good idea that you've got a structure there that you can hand, they come to you, wanted to have an event, you just say, okay, here's our policy.
Yeah, that was kind of the goal in mind.
Fit into our policy then.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, James, this reminds me of my college days. I had to put a deposit down, and if I damage my dorm room, I don't get the money back. How do we police the? What do I mean here? How do we determine that the requirements have been met so that the promoters will get their deposit back? Is somebody in charge of that?
Well, I think with staff and as you mentioned, the policing as well as the police department as well. And when we set up barricades, some of it is having the city actually do some of these set up and tear down the barricades so they're done correctly instead of people dragging a sawhorse across the road and thinking that's good enough. On the bigger highways, you take a little more of a standard barrier to have to use. But you have insurance, you have just a lot of different areas to where we kind of try to outline how that would be done, whether it be deposits or mainly insurance certificates, liability, et cetera, as you look through it.
I think this is a very good idea, and I like the framework of it. One thing I've heard from the public over the last couple of years from quite a few people is there's a big difference between using public property from the city that's really citizens-owned property for events and then having them be free, like Heritage Days, it's free to get into, or things like that, as opposed to taking public streets away from people and then still charging $10, $15, $35 a person to get in. People think that's two different things. We're letting them use their public property for free, yet they have to pay to get on that road or that place for that day or two, and it doesn't make any sense. So maybe the fee structure could be different. If it's a free event to the public, $25 seems to be fine. But if you're going to charge, a family of $100 to get in for, eat a sandwich or listen to a couple bands, seems like giving them a whole bunch of streets to do that isn't really fair to the public. And that's the feedback I've gotten. So.
Okay, we'll definitely consider that when we look through this. I think this is a, let me see, it's a first reading. I believe it is. We can certainly take a look at that.
That makes sense. We're letting them use a citizen-owned street that citizens' taxpayers pay for, and some of these places are then using that public street that the citizens have already paid for their whole lives and then charging them to get into it. Where some of these events are free for everyone to go to. And there's a huge difference there, I think, in that. So.
Oh, there is. When you look at a block party permit, though, they're blocking off a public street as well. It might just be in their neighborhood, but they may prevent you from coming in, period. Whether it's free or not, you're just not allowed in. I don't know if that's necessarily right as well, but that's kind of what the application process, and if it's large enough, it comes to council, and that's kind of what it's going at. I don't know if we can restrict what people do or don't charge. Some may charge at the gate, not charge for food and drink. Some may be free, but the food and drink's outrageous. I'm not sure how we would put the parameters in to police that going forward, but we can certainly take a look at how this is written and see if there's something we can do with that. Yeah. And try and have an alternate to it if possible for the second reading. Council approves. So.
And another way to look at it is that those streets are providing for a relatively short period of time some amenities that aren't normally there when they're used as public streets.
And when I drafted a lot of this,
telling you what I've heard.
Mm-hmm. There was a lot of cities that we looked at. We looked at a lot of different cities' ordinances, and we tried to. There was a common theme throughout all of them, and basically they really looked at just encouraging events, but making sure they ran smoothly, so people weren't inconvenienced. So you had the right number of porta potties and the right number.
Well, I think this is excellent.
Barricades.
I was just bringing up the difference that I've heard from people.
Sure.
Yep. We'll try and factor that and see if we can't get that to look at.
That may just be when we vote on them too. It's,
You're also generating revenue with local option sales tax as well.
Bringing the people through, and absolutely.
People in, so.
No, we just needed something a little more robust because the one we had was so simple we really couldn't hold them to anything. It was just there was. So hopefully this will accomplish that. Yes, sir.
One thing I would like to see maybe added, amended, or something in there is that you've got the provision for rubbish for trash, but it's only talking about trash and doesn't talk about recyclables, doesn't talk about bottle containers. Okay. I know when Ragbag came through, they had both garbage containers and pop bottle receptacles. So, they were able to separate those out. I don't know if we can separate all three, but we've got that ability. I mean, we collect recycling from people. I think a lot of people are used to throwing recycles into the recycling, so.
And during this process, we can actually charge for the cans and that we provide actually,
Right.
and recycling bins too, like Oktoberfest. There was some of that going on. So the documents that are other than the chapter is something is what you're adopting,
Right.
but the rest of those documents are just meant to give you a background as to how we'll administer things, and those will actually change over time as we work through those.
Mhm.
And those are ones that we kind of came up with based on what we saw in other communities. So we tried to get something started so that it wasn't just the chapter. We wanted to show you the application forms and the information things that can be changed from time to time to really make it work well. And in fact, Tab came up with another application form that was for races, for the races that we do a lot, the 5Ks and things. And they're a little different situations, so we may have a different application for those kinds of events, just because they're going to be customized for that kind of event. So
There's a recycling question on that.
yeah.
There's a recycling question on that one?
Yep.
Okay. Well,
So,
I just,
so we'll add things to those documents.
Helpful discussion, formal.
One question I had with a lot of the civic groups and that doing the 5K, 10K runs, I would hate to see them get caught up in a lot of this that's really meant for longer term, larger groups, those type of things. And
But some of those are actually fairly large quantities of people, and they do food and do a lot, and they do block some roads or at least use some public space. We're not trying to make the process difficult, but we're trying to help them think about things up front that they can anticipate to prevent problems during the event. And that's really what we're trying to do, is to make people safer, make it go smoother, make them have a more successful event.
It's kind of a checklist for them, because a lot of times we've seen things after such large events that we wish we'd have done this, or they could have learned from that, and this is trying to incorporate that in. And it'll probably be a living document if it does have issues that are continually happening. We'll have to insert something different, or as Bill had said, change the forms themselves, trying to incorporate more information or fee structures. But for now, we just want to get something on the books. We had something more than the simple, we're going to close this block, and by the way, there's 1,000 people coming. We need 4 blocks and food and vendors, and because that's, again, kind of how we're having to do it now. We just didn't have anything in existence. So
I guess the only thing I noticed or didn't see in here that may be helpful is some of those build city services. Again, just a grid or a table, so that as you go through it, I know at the fire convention there's been some confusion on what was going to be billed, what wasn't going to be billed, that type of thing when it got into solid waste collection and some of those things. So.
We'll probably have a menu like that, because when it comes to closing, let's say First Street, we have the barricades now that we can actually rent them the barricades, and so that we wouldn't necessarily just do it for them. We'd say, if we're going to close First Street, we have the barricades that you can pay us to do, or we can provide city containers for garbage and for recycling, and those kind of things will be billed, and we'll try to make it clear to them. Again, those documents are sort of a start, and we can add to those documents that we give to people, and those fee for services is really what we're trying to get to, because we do spend a lot of extra time and effort, and we want to make sure that's incorporated into that process.
We're crescendoing into a motion.
I would move the first reading of ordinance 1018, an ordinance adopting Chapter 61, special events of the City Code of Waverly, Iowa, governing the use of city streets and public property for special events.
Second.
second.
Motion seconded. More council discussion. Public input on this one. Roll call vote.
Kangas.
Yes.
Gade.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Resnick. Scherer.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
First reading of ordinance 1018 unanimously approved. Regular business item number 10 is to amend our city code to include the south 50 feet of the Lenore Estates condominiums as part of the dry run waterway. Let's go to a motion.
I'd move third and final reading of ordinance 1015, an ordinance amending chapter 68, section 68.3B, 68.5, 68.6, 68.7, 68.12, dry run waterway of Waverly Municipal Code amending proposed language.
Second, please.
Second.
For the public that's had a lot of discussion already. More?
Was it ever an official ordinance? You know, I know we always send out flyers every year to people reminding them to mow all the way down to the dry run. And now, obviously, we do not want them to do that. Was that ever in the ordinance, or was that just something we reminded people to do and need to now remind people to not mow all the way down to the dry run in their backyards and stuff?
Well, we still have areas where the dry run is, well, it's now owned by the city. In the past, it wasn't necessarily all owned by the city. So we've acquired the property. And so what we're talking about is what areas that are still have private property that are in the dry run channel, and most of that's above 24th, and those areas that we just expanded.
Yep.
And they will be required to maintain that 12-inch, I think it's 12-inch, and so that's going to be really limited to those places where it's private property within that channel.
That makes sense. I think we might want to communicate to people like my neighborhood where I always had to mow all the way down to the concrete, and now obviously you don't want me to mow because you have the natural vegetation, you know, waterway there.
In the slope sections, right. And we will be notifying people going into next spring that we're going to be maintaining it, and that's why we acquired it for city ownership, so that we would be able to maintain it in order to improve the maintenance aspects of it. I mean, we had some people that were literally mowing it 2 inches, and we want the taller grasses, the native grasses, because they'll hold the soil and prevent erosion.
No, I know, exactly. But, I mean, we did require them to keep up that maintenance, so, and some people, I mean, it cuts down on my mowing by a ton, so that's a huge difference.
Right.
So
We used to have people, that would pile other leaves down in there and burn them, they pile brush, or you get the volunteer trees coming up and stuff.
Yep. I just want to make sure that people know that, so we don't have
It's just above 24th Street.
a section of the whole channel that happens to get mowed by accident or something. So.
Okay, thank you. Public input. Roll call vote, please.
Scherer.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
Gade.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Resnichek.
Yes.
Resolution or ordinance number 1015 is unanimously approved. Regular business item number 11 is to replace R1 and R2 districts in our code with R1 and R1A and R2 districts to allow for more diversity and type, density, location of housing. Basically, we can have smaller lots. This is, for the public, a second reading. So let's go directly to a motion.
I'll move the second reading of Ordinance 1017, an ordinance amending Chapter 100, providing for replacement of R1 and R2 district language with proposed R1, R1A, and R2 district language.
Second, please.
Second.
Council discussion.
I guess, I get the idea behind this. I'm not really in favor of smaller lots. I mean, it just seems like, I know the idea is we think it'll drive down new housing costs and stuff, but it seems like even with the smallest lots that we allow, houses go $300,000 when they're new. So I get the idea behind it. I just don't know if I'm in favor of creating a super, Chicago style or Boston.
Yeah, Chicago, we can go to some of the best, most expensive homes are in 25-foot lots. They go back. So
yeah,
the expense doesn't depend on the width of the lot, but it does give us flexibility. Do you want to weigh in on this?
The R1 and R1A are really pretty alike, and we had a typo the last meeting, and in this one, the R1A and the R1, the street size is actually limited to 29 feet on both of those. Last week, I think on the one R1 we had 29, but on the R1A we had 37, and it was intended to be 29 on both R1 and R1A. It's only on the R2 that we require a 37-foot street, and that's because that will allow, with the smaller lot sizes, you can have a parking place per lot. And we had to have that 37-foot street in order to have parking on both sides. In the larger lots, you have more spaces on the street that you don't need the wider streets. And in fact, that drives up the cost of development by increasing the streets by 8-foot width, and also the maintenance in the future of that extra 8-foot width. And when you have larger lots, you have enough parking places on the street without having them on both sides, parking on both sides. So that's what we did with the two. R1A just allows for twin homes to be in that district. R1 does not allow twin homes to be in that district. So when we do zoning in the future, when we change a zoning or when we add new zoning, there'll be a distinction between whether it's an R1 or an R1A.
And we certainly, from my point of view, I've been very interested in more diversity and flexibility, and so it seems to me the right direction.
The next step is going to be the R3, R4 districts, where we're going to do some clarification with those, because those will be the multifamily. I think R3 is going to be 3-plexes and 4-plexes, and then R4 will be above four. We haven't worked on that yet. We're going to have study groups with planning and zoning, and frankly, anybody's invited to. We'll try to make notice on those, because those are public meetings of the P&Z, but there'll be work sessions on those two districts during the winter.
The public planning and zoning obviously is behind a lot of this, and it comes to us solid support, unanimously.
A lot of discussion.
Well, actually, there's a caveat, because they did vote to say they wanted the wider streets, and that's where staff recommended the streets that we have, recommended the size, because we think it's very important to not drive up the cost of creating those streets and those developments, and providing the city with more concrete than we need to maintain.
Yeah, and we're going to provide some of the history on that next week at the study session when we talk about parking requirements.
We're on second reading here. I want the council to really weigh in here. David?
Yeah, I wonder maybe Wes, I think I'm kind of thinking maybe the same. The lot size probably, all it's doing is making a smaller yard, and the house is getting cheaper.
Right. That's what we've known. That's what happened.
Actually, I've seen, we had a neighborhood that was zoned R4, and I've seen the opposite. The houses have actually gotten more expensive than other areas after a very short period of time. So I guess I would have, I'm curious from a housing strategy if we try to manage this, or I guess what's the plan, or maybe
the width has been reduced from 85 to 75, so we're only reducing the width by 10 feet in the R1 district. And that's really consistent with what we see in a lot of the high-growth areas, Des Moines suburbs, Des Moines, and all the urban areas, that they're going down to a 75-foot width. We standardize that somewhat with those.
It doesn't require them to build 75. It's just saying what the minimum allowable will be for each of these zoning districts.
And I think the R1A is, that's really the newer and more different part of this, which does allow for attached homes. And those typically, are more moderately priced.
Mm-hmm.
Where before we
Which
always
is what
had
we
to get
want.
special, and a lot of those have been voted down in the past, like when people have come to try to put duplexes in.
Yeah, we didn't allow them actually in R1 at all. And I think that's where the changes happened a lot of places, Cedar Falls.
There's been people that have come forward to try to get a lot changed to build a duplex here or there, and that.
Right. And we're not talking about duplexes, we're talking about single-family homes that are attached, because the duplex is actually a rental, and so the R1 district requires them to be single-family attached, which means they're two separate properties. They're just attached by one wall and a property line.
Can't rent out a single-family home.
Well, you can. I'm just saying you can't. Well, you can't live in both sides.
Minority.
Yeah. You wouldn't have a homestead on both sides of a duplex.
Thank you. We want discussion on this one, so any more discussion?
I guess, so when the R4 comes, we pretty much hashed through all that with the whole new development.
No, not yet.
And that All, that's where all the lot sizes and everything were.
We don't want our,
That was all special provisional type stuff we voted in just for that development.
we allowed R4s to have single-family homes, and I think what we'd like to say is our single-family home should be an R1 or R1A, and we don't want them in R4. And we want to be able to control what goes in R4 and R3 so that people know what they're getting when they get in a new district. And it's not going to prevent any development. We just want it to be labeled right. If you're going to have an R4 district, we have one at Rolling Meadow. That R4 district had single-family dwellings almost all the way through, but it had an apartment building, and it also, since it's zoned R4, it can have multifamily, multi-unit housing. And maybe most people didn't think that was the case. Well, if we had an R1A or an R1, then they would know that they wouldn't be in that district with apartment buildings or multifamily dwellings.
So then the only way we could get a multifamily would be to like spot zone a little R4 spot in the middle of somewhere to allow apartment building or a duplex.
Well, I don't think we'd want to spot zone it. You basically layer the zoning. You try to get multifamily between commercial and single family. You look at where the streets are the dividing areas between maybe a change in zoning. You try to find out where developers want to build things, and you look at if it's appropriate, you give them an R4 or an R3 for that particular development. It's really looking at the open areas that aren't zoned right now and saying, what kind of vision does a developer have? And if the planning and zoning agrees with that, then they recommend it to this body and the zoning gets changed. And we want more clarity and more definition on what's going to be in that particular district, and saying you can do whatever you want. If it's R4, you can do whatever you want. And that's really not what we want.
Will those get grandfathered in if there already are R4? And you make it so they can't have?
If we change the R4 ordinance, it'll change whatever's currently zoned as R4.
It's the zoning from behind Miller's all the way to soccer fields. That's all R4, right?
No, because the R4 was the part that's already been developed. I think there's an area that's not R4 yet.
But there's single-family homes going up in an R4 right now, right?
Because that was properly zoned at the time.
So that changes.
That was the concern at the time. Was
to tear down those homes, or?
No,
No.
but the concern was that because we zoned it R4, that it would be multifamily, and he was doing the R4 so that he could do the smaller lot sizes, because
Right.
the R1 wouldn't have allowed the smaller lot sizes. So
It was already zoned R4 when he bought that
it would
property.
probably be more appropriately zoned R1A
Right.
now.
Right. It would be more like the R1A that it is now. Although we've increased that size because we thought about that subdivision and said 65 seems to be pretty narrow. And so what we've done is actually increase the minimum for that to 75. So rather than look at it as a small R1, we're looking at it as a bigger R1A. Where that
You said, so when we do change R4 and you take out that you can't build single-family homes in R4, everything that is R4 will turn to that new R4. So what happens to all of our R4s that already have homes in it?
Well, the ones I know of now probably are intended for that. I don't know that there's R4s that we're concerned about changing. They could come in and ask their zoning be changed also.
So you're saying we would not change the existing R4 areas to the new standards?
I would not change an R4 unless a developer or an owner requested it. It would just be subject to the new R4 designation when it's passed.
I know it's a lot of discussion, but I want it. Anything more on this one, Wes? I hear you. Even though I know
So it's zoned R4 today, and there's a house built there.
It doesn't matter if the house is already built. It can stay there.
You're worried it get torn down?
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to get torn down.
You're not really going to convert the area.
It grandfathers in.
I asked if it grandfathered in.
Yes,
You
it
said
does.
no.
No, it does. It grandfathers in. I didn't know.
Originally, you said you wouldn't grandfather.
Yeah.
That's why I
No.
was-
Everything that's already existing
All right.
already exists.
May the minutes so record.
There we go.
Thank you, Wes.
That solved my confusion.
I wonder, could there ever be a situation where, as land is purchased and developed, for example, the land that was annexed, that we just recently annexed, the developer might choose to request that to be zoned R1A to be flexible, The challenge, though, and they might have, whatever the lot size might be, it might be 85 or it might be 95. The challenge, though, is anyone could put a duplex in there in the middle.
In the R1A, that would have to be a single family, it would have to be a zero lot line unit. So it would have to have two
Yeah.
separate, a separate entity. I mean, the two
Oh, two separate homes.
homes that are attached.
Or I guess I'd consider that a duplex.
But
or,
a duplex is owned by a common ownership, and it's all one lot. I mean, it's all one structure that's owned by one person, and it's a
Yeah,
single.
it's like a brownstone.
These
Tax-
have two single
taxed
owners.
entity.
Yeah.
A zero lot line is actually two separate.
kind of
Two separate homes.
Yeah, saying the same thing. Or
They're a little
I think some
different.
It's a
examples.
little different, but similar.
Yeah.
The
Because
duplexes
you
are
could
allowed in
technically
R2
still
now.
rent out both sides of the.
Yeah, but you'd have a
Two
multi-family.
family.
You'd have I guess you could have the uncertainty of single home. Somebody puts one of these in the middle, single home. Sometimes people might perceive that as impacting property values because it's different. So I wonder if, that might be something to consider as land is being developed and, someone builds the dream home, and then they've got this next to them, which I'm not saying is bad or good, but some people perceive that as something that they wouldn't.
You lose continuity in the neighborhood, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
We require 100 feet wide lots with a twin home in that R1A. It's not a 75-foot lot. Because
But you're
it's a
bringing up-
larger size.
Each side
Too
would be
much-
100.
No, each side is
Yeah.
50.
A two,
The combined total is.
100, yes, for that.
Uh,
So that's a little different than, you can't squeeze a zero lot line duplex.
Sure,
Or
yeah.
a twin home. on
Yeah,
a
it's just
75-foot lot.
something
But
to
you
consider,
could
I
take
guess.
two 75s and build a twin home across.
No.
You can't do that?
No. I suppose you could. Technically, you could, yes.
Buy two lots and
Yep.
put it in the
Buy
middle.
two 75-foot lots, you plant a twin home right in the middle.
The lot
Right,
line goes
right.
right through the wall of the
Yep.
two.
But it has to be 100 total, which obviously you're going to do.
You can do that if you're 150, right? You could.
I-
Keep in mind that property that's being annexed is part of 110 acres. It's all agricultural right now. And it all abuts existing R4 on the south and existing R1 on the east. And at some point, developers are going to come to us and say, we want a certain parcel zoned a certain way. And they're going to have visions that we'll have to look at and to consider, and it's up to P&Z to make recommendations and up to this body to make zoning decisions.
I suppose it would be, everybody would have different perceptions of, it would have, that could impact the marketability of the land, if.
Yeah, I mean, the example you're bringing up, we actually voted down just a year or so ago when Engelbrecht came and wanted to build a duplex on the end of that single-family, row of houses. And legally he could, but the neighborhood didn't want one there, so.
It wasn't allowed in that zoning.
Well, if we would have voted for it.
And one of the things that planning and zoning, I think, typically looks at pretty carefully are those transitions, so if they know what's surrounding it, that agricultural land right now, and a developer comes and asks for particular zoning, that'll be something that they'll do a lot of homework and thinking and discussing about before it comes to us.
And there's a huge evolution, there's a huge discussion going on in the country through developers and everything. What constitutes a wonderful neighborhood? We have small town values that need to drive this as well. Small town value is everybody lives together. You take the hearts of the neighborhoods other than the development areas, and you have all different styles of homes and different expense levels, and we need some diversity and some small town value in our subdivisions. And I know this is part of the discussions, and this is where we're going to get some flexibility so that someone could have their mother-in-law, if they needed to, live 3 doors down because they could be helping watch it, and a whole bunch of reasons why, and have a home that's really, really nice, but maybe a little smaller lots. There's all kinds of options on housing that we have to kind of watch. Large discussion. Thank you for that. We need last inputs. Wes, do you want to weigh in last? Then we're going to move on.
I think you're right. As things develop, we vote on those things. But like Rolling Meadows, for example, that was a perfect place for an R4 because it was all agricultural land and it was right next to a school. And so they built apartments there. Well, somebody decided, they could have left this buffer zone between the school and the apartments and then built the homes, different, but that's not what they decided to do. So at the time, it made perfect sense. But you look at it now and you have an apartment complex in the middle of a neighborhood, but it was all farmland.
Yeah, it was there
perfectly
first.
placed right behind a school, trapped on a busy,
But it's
road.
amazing how life goes on.
So when
Still
we're
not
planning for that in
bad.
the future, all that's going to change, obviously.
Yeah, let's see, public input on this? Roll call vote.
Resnichek.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Gade.
Yes.
Share.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
Second reading of ordinance 1017 unanimously passed. One more reading to go for the public. Regular business, item number 12, is to formally adopt the city code, all the ordinances and amendments. Motion, please.
I would move second reading of ordinance 1016 and also waive the third reading. Ordinance adopting the city code of City of Waverly, Iowa, and setting December 5th. I can't do that.
Public hearing. We
I'll explain that after you.
never had a public
Oh, I didn't read to the end of there, so, okay. I'll go back and start over. I'll move second reading of ordinance 1016, an ordinance adopting the city code of City of Waverly, Iowa, and setting December 5th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of City Hall as the date and time and place for public hearing.
Second, please.
Second.
Motion second. Council discussion.
Just trying to save Carla's voice.
I appreciate that. Normally, and I think we started this last year, but normally we would like to waive the third reading because it's just a housekeeping issue. Actually, I'm learning more and more all the time as city clerk, and we've come across a statement in actually the Iowa code that says anytime you change an ordinance, you have to do it with a public hearing. So we're doing it at the end of the year to cover all of our ordinance changes that have been done throughout the year. So this will be practice from now on to do a public hearing. But we can do it on the second reading next time. We had just already had the first reading done this year.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. We did second.
Yes.
More council discussion? Public input? Roll call vote?
Waldstein.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Gade.
Yes.
Scherer.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
Resnichek.
Yes.
Second reading of ordinance 1016, unanimously approved. Regular business item number 13 is a mayoral appointment. I'd like to present for approval Ann Rothy. Dr. Rothy is recently our guest council person here, appointing her to the Economic Development Commission. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor signify with yes.
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 Opposed with no. Welcome on board, Ann.
I didn't know if we'd have any discussion. Was there a vacancy or something that Ann is replacing, or?
Yes, Patsy Reed.
Okay. Was she notified?
Yeah.
Okay.
She actually resigned.
She actually resigned,
Okay.
yeah,
Good.
creating the vacancy.
She resigned, but
Yeah,
good that we got that covered. Sorry.
that's very good. Also, please,
Rewind that if you can.
yeah, please.
Appreciate her service.
Yes, and we do thank her for her leadership everywhere. With Ann Rothy, let's we remember that her father passed away. I think it was November 12th or something. Dr. Rothy, James Rothy, was anchor person in our community for years and years, a beloved physician. I think the
Friday.
review is Wednesday,
Our funeral's
4:30
Friday.
to 7 at Corson Funeral Home, Kaiser Corson, and Friday, it's at the college, I believe, 10:30 in the chapel. So we remember, our condolences go to that entire family and all their loved ones. Reports for our boards and commissions. We have the library board minutes from September 13. Any comments on them? Officially received library board for October 11th. Any comments? Officially received City of Waverly State Annual Financial Reports. Any comments? Officially received monthly financials October. Comments? Officially received Board of Adjustments minutes, October 27th. Comments officially received. Planning and Zoning for November 3rd. Comments officially received. Golf Commission minutes, November 8th. Officially received. And the senior calendar for November has been received. Officially received now. We have staff comments at this time. Any staff comments?
Let me check this time first before I answer. I think we're good, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good. City council comments. Let's do, am I right? Am I right? Edie, Dan, or David?
For me tonight.
Dan? On my left?
Just a reminder, it's Saturday is Small Business Saturday, so shop local, check out the downtown merchants, see what's up, and what they have to offer.
Thank you, Pro Tem. Mike?
I just want to thank the journalism students for showing up tonight and congratulate them for surviving this entire event without walking out early.
Mr. Dan?
I think a notice went out that the solid waste leaf collection, those staying open for a couple more weeks for folks still catching up on lawn care and tree trimming, that type of thing.
Yeah, there's still a lot of leaves on the trees, and so we're going to keep the yard waste site open until Saturday, December 10th. If you have leaves that are bagged in biodegradable bags, you can call Public Services, and we will still do the curbside collection by appointment at 352-6247.
Very good. Mr. West?
I guess there's a couple things. First, I'd just like to, Anelia, our director of our newspaper, is going through a tough time right now, so I just want to thank her for what she does and her thoughts. Yeah, her father passed away. So.
Oh, okay. Didn't know.
Yep, go ahead. I didn't want to say much unless you feel comfortable.
Eric Van Sickle, Waverly Newspapers. Yeah, I just learned this morning, but her father passed away overnight Saturday. And so, if anybody here knows Anelia, I guess you would appreciate anybody expressing condolences.
Sure.
Not certain when visitation will be, but his body will be cremated. So
Location, is that Cedar Falls also?
I'm sorry, what?
Cedar Falls?
Yeah, that's all down in Cedar Falls. So, I had asked Anelia this morning to send up a formal obituary. She's planning also on doing something personal about it, but we'll keep your eye out. We'll have an announcement.
Thank you.
Very good.
Number
He was
2,
living
Wes?
with her at the end, though, so I know it's hard, but
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of dovetail off of that. I mean, I think it's important that people. Not everybody agrees with our newspaper at all times, but I think we're very lucky that we still have a newspaper. There's a lot of towns our size that just don't have papers anymore, and there's a lot of big towns that are not going to have papers anymore. So I think it's a neat thing that we still have that in our community. But
Or maybe if I can
Yeah, go ahead.
interrupt. Yeah, our paper is larger than towns I've lived in. That the town is twice as big as ours. It's an amazing paper.
For the public, we have about 1,400 homes that they deliver to. So that's the subscription. That's what?
It was like 3,000 or.
Well, when they do a general.
literally, I get mine online. It's really nice too. And then just.
I hope I'm right on that, and I'll
Yeah.
stand corrected if I don't. Go ahead, Wes.
I am going to bow out for the executive session. I had a procedure done at the hospital today and hurt, so I did make it here, Pete. So I am here. I know you're very worried about that, but I did come even though I was in the hospital today. So. But just so the public knows, I won't be at the executive session.
That's fine. Darren?
I wonder if I could just piggyback on something Wes just said. if you have a newspaper with which everybody agrees, the newspaper isn't doing its job.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. As one who contributes regularly. Mayor, I'll note just a Thanksgiving note before we move to executive session. For those watching who are truly worried about the political divisions of our nation adversely affecting our Thanksgiving gatherings, which is a potential problem, and I know it's talked all across the nation, feared by many, many, a quick reflection. Waverly has been traditionally anchored by a strong sense of humility. And we thank our churches, both now and through the years, who have helped instill this sense of humility. When we come to this coming Thursday, I think it will be needed in abundance on all sides of the political divide, thinking of both personal humility, but also just a humility over truth. Truth is very complex these days, and there's a lot of competing truths. And truth never lies with one side of an argument or one political party or any one type of person. So the great part of Thanksgiving is that when you have a sense of thankfulness, it's inseparable from humility. And it moves us from a focus on right and wrong to an appreciation of life and the unearned gifts of life that come our way. So I'd like, as mayor, to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And remember, our motto in Waverly is we're for everyone as best we can be, and that includes when we differ. Have a great holiday. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
I would move into executive discussion to discuss collective bargaining strategy. At the name. The upcoming public safety unit negotiations is provided by section 20.17, section 3 of the Code of Iowa.
Second, please.
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote, please. And we invite the public to continue to go out. That's fine. Carla?
Waldstein.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Resnicek.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
Chair.
Yes.
Mackenzie.
Yes.
Okay, we, with Wes' excuse, we unanimously move to executive session. We'll allow the public to leave the chamber.